Imagine a monster so terrifying that even other demons prefer not to cross its path. A being with two heads that hate each other, tentacles instead of arms, and a reputation that spans centuries. But here's the twist. It all started with a simple typo. Yes, you heard that right. One of the most iconic creatures in modern pop culture exists because of a distracted scribe from the 4th century. Stay until the end of this video, because the story of the Demogorgon is far more fascinating and bizarre than you could ever imagine. Let's start at the beginning, and trust me, this is pure chaos. Around the year 400 AD, a Christian scholar named Lactantius Placidus was writing a commentary on a Roman epic poem, Statius's Thebaid. In his text, he mentions something that resembles Demogorgon, the supreme god whose name cannot be known. Except here's the problem, that word never existed. Scholars today believe that our good friend Lactantius simply misread or miscopied the Greek word demiurge, which means creator or craftsman. You know, that Platonic philosophical concept designating the creator of the physical world. A little slip of the pen, a few changed letters, and boom, the Demogorgon was born. Art historian Jean Sesnek perfectly summed up the situation by saying that the Demogorgon is a grammatical error become God. It's a bit like making a mistake in a history assignment, and then 5 centuries later, everyone thinks it's a real historical figure. The difference is that here, the error survived more than 1,000 years and terrorized entire generations. The name was probably influenced by the Gorgons of Greek mythology, those 3 sisters with snakes instead of hair, the most famous being Medusa. And if you want to know the whole story of Medusa, you may watch that video here in the upright corner. You get the picture. Demon plus Gorgon equals something really creepy. And since no one dared to check the sources back then, the myth spread like wildfire. In the 14th century, Giovanni Boccaccio, the Italian writer, brought the Demogorgon back into the spotlight with his influential treatise, Genealogia Deorum Gentilium. Boccaccio describes him as a primordial god, the ancestor of all other gods. From there, the Demogorgon begins its true career of literary terror. Renaissance authors loved invoking his name to create an atmosphere of absolute horror. In Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, written around 1590, the protagonist pronounces the name of Demogorgon while summoning the demon Mephistopheles. Imagine the scene. You're in an Elizabethan theater, candles flickering, and an actor screaming forbidden names to make the devil appear. That must have been spectacular. Edmund Spenser, in his allegorical poem The Fairy Queen, describes the Demogorgon as one of hell's masters, residing down in the bottom of the deep abyss, far from the view of gods and heavenly bliss. It's poetic, it's terrifying, and it really sets the mood. But it's John Milton who nails the coffin shut with Paradise Lost in 1667. In his monumental epic about humanity's fall, Milton mentions the dreaded name of Demogorgon. Note that he doesn't place him directly in hell, but in an unformed region where chaos reigns with night. Satan must cross this zone during his journey from hell to earth. That's how much the Demogorgon was considered a being beyond even traditional hell. In the 16th century, Dutch demonologist Johann Weyer lists the Demogorgon among hell's demons in his treatise on demonology. At that time, it was common to transform ancient pagan deities into demons because people thought that the gods worshipped in antiquity were actually disguised evil creatures. The Demogorgon went from a vague ancestral god to a true agent of evil, master of fate in the infernal hierarchy. Vincenzo Reghini's 1786 opera, with a libretto by Lorenzo da Ponte, originally written for Mozart, features the Demogorgon as protagonist. Percy Bysshe Shelley, in his 1820 lyrical drama Prometheus Unbound, presents the Demogorgon as the offspring of Jupiter and Thetis, a dark, shapeless spirit that eventually dethrones Jupiter himself. Shelley never specifies whether the Demogorgon is male or female, adding even more mystery to this creature. If you think Stranger Things invented the modern Demogorgon, think again. It was Gary Gygax and Brian Bloom, the creators of Dungeons & Dragons, who truly transformed this old literary name into a legendary monster. In 1976, in the supplement Eldritch Wizardry for the original edition of D&D, the Demogorgon made its first gaming appearance. And what an appearance. The D&D Demogorgon isn't just another monster. He's the self-proclaimed Prince of Demons, and nobody contests that title, because anyone who tried to take it from him ended up in pieces. telekinesis. Imagine an 18-foot-tall creature with a massive, muscular gorilla torso, scaly lizard legs, and a forked tail covered in spikes. But wait, here comes the best part. Instead of arms, he has long tentacles capable of strangling or smashing anything. And his heads, his two mandrill or hyena heads that sprout from serpentine necks. It's the kind of design that makes you regret choosing an adventurer's career. In the first edition of D&D, the Demogorgon had 200 hit points, an absolute record for the time. Players who encountered him knew they were facing the final boss of final bosses. His appearance was so striking that it has remained virtually unchanged since 1976. The Demogorgon's two heads aren't there just for show. They have distinct personalities and names: Amul and Hethrodaya. Amul, the left head, is the manipulator, the strategist who prefers deception and cunning. Hethrodaya, the right head, is the pure destroyer who wants to pulverize everything. These two heads cordially hate each other and constantly seek to dominate one another. It's like having two mortal enemies fused in the same body. This internal duality makes the Demogorgon even more dangerous because he's fundamentally unpredictable and irrational. Alright, this is the perfect moment for a quick break in our demonic exploration. If you enjoy discovering the fascinating and often bizarre origins of your favorite creatures, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. You don't want to miss what comes next, trust me. Throughout D&D editions, the Demogorgon character has been considerably enriched. In the third edition, we learn that he might have been one of the creations of the Queen of Chaos, a demoness from a race older than the gods themselves. She supposedly rejected the Demogorgon, calling him a failed deformity, before creating Orcus as an example of a true demon. This story establishes the legendary rivalry between Orcus and Demogorgon, two titans of evil who have been fighting for demonic supremacy for eons. The fourth edition offers an alternative origin. The Demogorgon was originally a primordial, becoming a demon after arriving in the Abyss. The Demogorgon's realm is the 88th layer of the Abyss, a charming place called the Gaping Maw or the Brine Flats. Imagine a dark and humid place where stagnant salt water stews under an eternally gray sky. Organic walls pulse with malevolent life, and everywhere float these strange particles that look like falling snow but are actually toxic spores. It's the kind of place where even other demons prefer not to set foot. The Demogorgon reigns there from his palace of abysm, watching over his corrupted domain with his two vigilant heads. Power-wise, the Demogorgon is absolutely terrifying. He can cast spells with disconcerting ease, dispel magic, telekinesis, feeble mind. His magic gaze can stun, confuse, or charm his opponents if they fail to resist his psychic influence. He has legendary resistance that allows him to automatically succeed on certain saving throws he would normally fail. His tentacles inflict massive force damage, and worse yet, they can drain the vital energy from their victims, reducing their hit point maximum. If that maximum drops to 0, you're dead, permanently. The Demogorgon can also travel between planes of existence, an ability few demons possess. The cult of the Demogorgon in the D&D universe is composed of fanatics who worship chaos and unpredictability. Worshippers include evil aquatic creatures like Ixitzochitl, troglodytes who name him Amon Ibor, the sibilant beast, and Kuo-Toa who call him Limugugun, the Deep Father. These cultists don't even pronounce his real name aloud, so much do they fear him. Looking at the Demogorgon's symbol can drive people mad or corrupt them toward evil. His faithful receive powers that mimic his own abilities: charm person, enlarge, reduce, and vampiric touch. In D&D adventures, facing the Demogorgon is the equivalent of a deadly final exam. The adventure Out of the Abyss for 5th edition places a Demogorgon cult at the center of the plot, and the campaign ends with an epic battle between the Prince of Demons and several other demon lords, with players desperately trying to survive the abyssal carnage. The Demogorgon has a challenge rating of 26 in 5th edition, making him one of the most powerful monsters in the game. To give you an idea, most player groups rarely reach level 20, and even at that level, fighting the Demogorgon remains a potentially lethal challenge. When the Duffer Brothers created Stranger Things, they knew they needed an iconic monster to terrorize the small town of Hawkins, Indiana. Being D&D D&D fans themselves. They drew directly from the game's bestiary. The first scene of the series shows Mike Wheeler as Dungeon Master throwing a Demogorgon at his players, and Will Byers attempting to fight it with a fireball before being defeated. It's a brilliant moment of foreshadowing. A few minutes later in the episode, Will is kidnapped by the real Demogorgon. But the Stranger Things Demogorgon isn't the two-headed demon from D&D. The Duffer Brothers completely reinvented the creature for their universe. Their version is a faceless humanoid predator with a head that opens like a carnivorous flower, revealing rows of sharp teeth. It's a terrifying cross between a werewolf and a Venus flytrap. Actor Mark Steger, who brought the first season's Demogorgon to life in motion capture, said the Duffer Brothers gave him simple instructions. You're essentially a shark, like the shark from Jaws, and you travel between dimensions to feed. This approach created something fundamentally different, but equally terrifying. The Stranger Things Demogorgon comes from a parallel dimension called the Upside Down. In November 1983, a young girl named Eleven, gifted with psychokinetic powers and used as a guinea pig by Hawkins National Laboratory, accidentally makes psychic contact with the Demogorgon during an experiment. Terrified, she involuntarily tears the fabric of reality, creating a gate between our world and the Upside Down. This is when the Demogorgon can set foot in Hawkins and begin its murderous hunt. The Upside Down itself is a fascinating dimension. It's a dark and decomposed copy of Hawkins, frozen at the moment of November 6, 1983. Everything is covered with organic tendrils. The air is saturated with toxic particles resembling ash or snow, and no human lives there. It's a place where sunlight never penetrates, where everything is bathed in a greenish and oppressive gloom. The walls pulse with strange and unhealthy life, as if the dimension itself were a living organism. The Demogorgon reigns there as supreme predator, hunting anything that moves. The Stranger Things Demogorgon possesses terrifying abilities adapted to its environment. It can create temporary portals to travel between dimensions, tearing its victims from our world to drag them into the Upside Down. It hunts primarily through its extremely developed sense of smell, capable of detecting blood from great distances. Its physical strength is superhuman. It can break through solid walls, rip off doors, and easily overpower a fit adult. The creature can also open its flower head to bite and shred its prey with brutal efficiency. Unlike the D&D Demogorgon with its two conscious heads, the Stranger Things one seems to operate with pure predator instinct, like a great white shark of dimensions. In the first season, the Demogorgon captures Will Byers and drags him into the Upside Down. For nearly a week, Will miraculously escapes the creature, hiding in the alternate version of his house and attempting to communicate with his mother Joyce through Christmas lights. Will is the only survivor among all the Demogorgon's victims that year. Barbara Holland, Nancy Wheeler's best friend, isn't so lucky. She's killed near Steve Harrington's pool, and her body is discovered later in the Upside Down, serving as a nest for the Demogorgon's eggs. The final confrontation between Eleven and the Demogorgon takes place at Hawkins Middle School. As the creature attacks her friends, Eleven uses her powers to literally disintegrate it, but accidentally transports herself into the Upside Down in the process. It's a moment of heroic sacrifice that defines Eleven's character and establishes her particular connection to the other dimension. The Demogorgon explodes into ash particles, but the Upside Down itself survives, setting the stage for future threats. In the second season, we discover the Demogorgon's complete life cycle. Will, still affected by his stay in the Upside Down, vomits a slug-like creature, a Demogorgon larva. Dustin Henderson finds one of these creatures and names it D'Artagnan, or Dart. We see Dart grow from a polywog, tadpole, to a demodog, a juvenile and canine version of the adult Demogorgon. These demodogs are smaller, faster, and hunt in packs under the control of the Mind Flayer, an even more terrifying entity that manipulates all creatures of the Upside Down in a kind of hive mind. The fourth season reveals that the entire Upside Down ecosystem is connected via a hive mind controlled by Vecna, formerly Henry Creel, the first test subject of Hawkins' lab. When Eleven made that first psychic contact with the Demogorgon in 1983, she wasn't just touching an isolated creature, but an extension of this larger consciousness. Vecna was using the Demogorgon as a tool, perhaps even directly possessing the creature to open that first gate. This would explain why the 1983 Demogorgon Demogorgon could create temporary portals, an ability that other Demogorgons seen later don't seem to possess. The Russians, fascinated by the Upside Down and seeking to exploit it as a weapon, capture several Demogorgons and transport them to a secret facility in Kamchatka. There, they use them as executioners in a deadly gladiator fight where prisoners must face the creatures. Jim Hopper, imprisoned in this gulag, must fight one of these Demogorgons in an absolutely terrifying sequence. This Demogorgon seems stronger, faster, and more ferocious than the 1983 one, perhaps because the Russians found a way to keep it active without direct connection to the Upside Down, or perhaps because they selected the most dangerous specimen. The design of the Demogorgon in Stranger Things required a blend of practical techniques and digital effects. For the first season, the Duffer Brothers wanted to use practical effects as much as possible to create tangible and real terror. Mark Steger wore a monster costume with a functional animatronic head that could open and close. This approach gave the Demogorgon a disturbing physical presence on set, allowing actors to react to something actually present rather than a green screen. Starting with the second season, with the introduction of multiple demodogs and more complex action sequences, the production shifted primarily to digital effects, but kept the fundamental design established in the first season. The impact of the Stranger Things Demogorgon on popular culture has been massive. The series introduced a whole new generation to the concept, with many young viewers discovering this mythical name for the first time. This created a halo effect for Dungeons & Dragons itself. Sales of the role-playing game exploded after the series' release, with thousands of new players wanting to live their own Hawkins-inspired adventures. Wizards of the Coast, D&D's publisher, even released an official Stranger Things starter set in 2019, allowing fans to play an adventure where they face the upside-down version of the Demogorgon adapted for beginners. So there you have it. You now know the whole story. The Demogorgon started as a simple scribe's error in the 4th century, transformed into a terrifying primordial god in Renaissance literature, became the self-proclaimed Prince of Demons in Dungeons & Dragons, and finally found new life as a nightmarish predator in Stranger Things. It's one of the longest and strangest evolutions of a mythological creature ever recorded. What makes the Demogorgon so enduring is its ability to adapt to each era, while maintaining its terrifying essence. Whether it's the forbidden name whispered by Renaissance poets, the two-headed demon that haunts D&D dungeons, or the faceless monster hunting in the Upside Down, the Demogorgon always represents the same thing, a force of chaos, destruction, and primal fear that transcends dimensions. It's a monster that reminds us that sometimes the greatest terrors are born from the most ridiculous accidents. The duality of the D&D Demogorgon, with its two heads in perpetual conflict, is a brilliant metaphor for the self-destructive nature of evil. Even at the height of his power, the Prince of Demons is his own worst enemy. If Amawul and Hethradaya could ever agree, the Demogorgon would probably be powerful enough to conquer all the abyss. But that unity is impossible, because chaos, by nature, cannot organize itself. It's a philosophical lesson hidden in a role-playing game monster. The Stranger Things Demogorgon, meanwhile, represents the terror of the unknown and the fragility of our reality. The idea that a parallel dimension could exist right next to ours, separated by an invisible veil that science could accidentally tear, touches on very real fears. The Demogorgon isn't just a monster. It's living proof that our understanding of the world is incomplete, and that unthinkable horrors could be hiding in dimensions we can't even perceive. For dungeon masters who want to use the Demogorgon in their D&D campaigns, remember that it should never be a simple bag of hit points to beat. The Demogorgon is a force of nature, an apocalyptic event on legs. Its introduction into a story should be prepared over entire sessions, with increasingly disturbing rumors, cultists preparing its arrival, warning signs of demonic corruption. When it finally appears, it should be the climax of an entire campaign, the moment when your players realize they're facing something that could easily annihilate them all. The Demogorgon also teaches us something about mythological creation itself. The best monsters aren't necessarily those with the noblest or most ancient origins. Sometimes, a simple error, an accident, a typo, can give birth to something that captures human imagination for centuries. The Demogorgon was never meant to exist, but once born from that error, it developed its own life, evolving and adapting through the ages, becoming more real and more terrifying with each iteration. Today, the Demogorgon is solidly anchored in global geek culture. Millions of people know its name, game, even if many are unaware of its literary or gaming origins. It has become an instantly recognizable symbol, a visual shortcut for terrifying interdimensional monster. Demogorgon cosplays appear at conventions, figurines adorn fans' shelves, and the name itself has become synonymous with Lovecraftian threat, cosmic terror that defies understanding. The Demogorgon's influence extends beyond Stranger Things and D&D. Other role-playing games and works of fiction have created their own versions or been inspired by the concept. The video game Baldur's Gate 2 features the Demogorgon as one of the game's most difficult optional bosses. In Dead by Daylight, the multiplayer horror game, the Stranger Things Demogorgon became a playable killer, allowing players to stalk their prey through dimensional portals. These adaptations show the concept's flexibility and its ability to function in different media and genres. For content creators, streamers, and modern players, the Demogorgon represents an ultimate challenge and a common cultural reference point. Saying, "That's my Demogorgon," in a conversation about video game bosses or TV series antagonists, everyone immediately understands. It's the insurmountable threat, the monster that defines the entire adventure, the big bad that makes even the most seasoned heroes tremble. It has become an archetype in its own right. The Demogorgon's future is assured. With Stranger Things' 5th and final season in preparation, we'll likely see new incarnations of the creature or revelations about its true nature in the Upside Down. Dungeons & Dragons continues to evolve with new additions and supplements, and the Prince of Demons remains a central figure in the game's mythology. New generations of players will discover this iconic monster, create their own stories around it, and add their own layers to this already incredibly rich legend. The beauty of the Demogorgon is that it now belongs to everyone. Gary Gygax and the Duffer Brothers took a name found in dusty old texts and transformed it into something living and terrifying. But every dungeon master, every fanfiction writer, every artist who draws their version of the monster contributes to evolving the myth. The Demogorgon isn't frozen in time. It continues to grow, mutate, adapt, exactly as a real demon would. So next time you watch Stranger Things and see that flower head open with its rows of teeth, or next time your dungeon master announces with a sadistic smile that a Demogorgon appears at the end of the corridor, remember, it all started with a distracted monk who miscopied a Greek word more than 1600 years ago. A simple typo, a grammatical error, and now look where we are. If that's not proof that mistakes can create something extraordinary, I don't know what is. The Demogorgon reminds us that the boundaries between error and creation, between chaos and order, between our world and the unknown, are thinner than we think. And maybe that's exactly what makes it so terrifying and fascinating at the same time. That's why this creature that should never have existed has become one of the most iconic monsters of our modern culture. From the depths of the abyss to the Upside Down, the Demogorgon still reigns, self-proclaimed prince of a terror that has spanned the centuries. And on that bone-chilling note, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild history of the Demogorgon, don't hesitate to drop a like and share this video. Tell me in the comments which version of the Demogorgon you prefer, the two-headed demon from D&D or the faceless predator from Stranger Things. And if you have your own stories of epic encounters with a Demogorgon in your role-playing sessions, I absolutely want to hear them. See you next time for exploring more mythical creatures that have shaped our collective imagination.